G'day, this is Andrew Price here from blenderguru.com, and in this video tutorial I'm going to be showing you how to do camera mapping using Blender. So what is camera mapping? Camera mapping is the process of taking a still photograph and then making it so that you can move a camera through it. So this sort of technique is used a lot for movies and TV shows and essentially any production where they want to save on either like a helicopter flyover, like you could, instead of paying for a helicopter to fly over a city and use that video, you could get a still photograph and then move the camera, basically use camera mapping to make it look like a video. And that's what I've done in the past. Like back in my early Blender days, I made this little short animation of a burning building. And then I did it again later on in the early Blender Guru days for the smoke simulator tutorial. I did essentially the same thing, did camera mapping for New York City. And then I did it again for the camera mapping tutorial, which I did again pretty early on in Blender Guru days. And I've actually already done a tutorial for this. So you might be wondering, why am I doing it again? And well, I wouldn't really normally redo a tutorial, except I've been bombarded with emails over the last couple of months by you guys. I don't know what has sparked this sudden interest in camera mapping, so maybe somebody can let me know, but I've been getting tweets, emails, all sorts of stuff from everybody saying, please do another camera mapping tutorial because your old one isn't relevant anymore. Apparently, in the old tutorial, I referenced the sticky function, the sticky texture coordinates, which aren't in Blender 2.6. So people are lost and they want help. So that's what this tutorial is. It's an updated version of that. So that's what we're going to be doing. So this is the finished scene that you can see right here. So as you can see looking at the scene, it's pretty basic looking geometry. It's not at all as complicated as it looks in the video. And that's because essentially all we're doing is just taking that photo and then just slapping the different portions of the photo onto this very basic blocky looking geometry. It's essentially like if, you know, back in the days, the primary school days, when you would have to do a diorama. It's like for your diorama, if you got a photograph and then just cut out like left wall, right wall, and just cut out each individual portion and then like stuck it to the sides of the box. You know, the floor goes here, the ceiling goes here. And then, you know, if you looked at it head on, it would look like the original photograph. So this is essentially the same thing with a little bit extra sort of tampering so that we can, you know, move the camera through it and, you know, without the illusion breaking. So, yeah, I've done camera mapping enough to sort of know some of the downfalls of it and how to work around some of the problems and stuff like that. So hopefully I can share some of that in this tutorial. So yeah, I think we can go ahead and get into it. So go ahead now and open up a new scene in Blender. Just check which version I'm using. Yes, this version. Okay, cool. All right, so the first thing you want to do whenever you're doing camera mapping is first of all, delete everything except the camera. Now I'm going to make this camera front on. So going into front view mode, hitting Control Alt numpad 0, and then I'm just going to position the camera sort of about there. Okay, now next thing you need to do is go ahead and load in your background image, or basically the image that you are working off, the reference image. So this is an image that I got off stock images. What's it called? Stock Exchange. Anyway, I'll put a link to this image. It's a great image. I probably had to look through like, got to be close to like 600 or 700 images before I found one that I figured would actually work. And anyway, this is one that I kind of liked. So that's what we're working with. Okay, so now you'll notice, or maybe you won't notice, but looking at this, it is actually stretched. It's kind of like squished down. And that's because this background image is going through the camera viewport. So actually that's one other thing we can change right now, is change it so that it's only viewable from camera, not from front or back or anything like that. So just from camera. Okay, so it's looking at it from the camera, which means that it is using these dimensions, which we set in our render panel right here. So if I change that, you can see it's now stretching our image. So in order to get it correctly mapped so that there's no inaccuracies later on, you need to make sure that you're working off the same dimensions as the original photograph. So if I open up Windows Explorer, this guy right here. I'm going to click on this image, and you can see down here the dimensions are 2500 by 1946. So 2500, 1946, like so. Awesome. So now that is the exact dimensions of the original image, like that. You can see that it is now an exact, the exact size as that. Okay, cool, awesome. Now, the next part, unfortunately, is the most painful part of the process, and I hate doing it every single time, but it is very important. This is pretty frustrating. I have to sort of get ready for it. Whew. Okay, so we have to basically set up our scene so that it will work with the photograph. It sounds pretty basic, but it's hard. Let me explain. Okay, so this, looking at our scene here, it's essentially a cube. I mean, you've got a curved cylinder, rooftop, like ceiling, whatever. But essentially, it is a cube. So let's go ahead, add in a cube, and I'll press Tab, and then Z. I'll just sort of move that up, just so that it's resting on that origin point like that. Okay. And then now if I scale that up like that, and then let's just give it a little bit of length as well. Whoops. Like so. Okay, so now if I just grab my camera, I would want to make this camera so that it is basically in line with, so our cube is in line with the dimensions of the room. So I need this face, the one on that back there, to be acting as that back wall of our photograph. So if you have a look, what you'll notice is that no matter how much I move this camera around, that the floor doesn't ever line up. You'll see that this one over here is sort of out there, this one's over there, and then you can move the camera left and right to sort of adjust it, but it's always not quite right. So then you go, oh yeah, I need to adjust the focal length. And then you go through the process of checking out the focal length, like trying out like, oh, maybe it's 28 millimeters, and then you sort of adjust the scene. And it's a back and forth long process. So I would advise you, if you are looking for images to go off, I would advise using the site Flickr if you're using a different image, not the one that we're using here. Because Flickr allows you, for one, to search for Creative Commons images, so you're not going to get sued by someone for using their image in the wrong way. So you can search for that. But also, they frequently give out the camera information, which will tell you what focal length the photograph was shot at. So then you can take that focal length and then just put it in the camera settings right here. Now in this instance, we actually don't know our focal length because we got it from the stock exchange website. So we would have to experiment, go back and forth, and it'd be just it's a horrible process. I actually almost gave up on this tutorial because I was so frustrated in this initial stage I couldn't get it right. Anyway, I happen to know that 24 millimeters works good for our scene. Hooray! So now all I need to do is just position this camera so that it's gonna work. So I'm moving the camera because you can see that, looking at our background image here, that inside this shed, the photographer's standing basically on the left side of the warehouse, because obviously we're standing on the left side of this column, which is in the center of the building. So I've moved the camera slightly to the left like that, and I just need to rotate it along the Z axis like so, something like that. Okay, and then maybe because it's slightly tilted a little bit, like that, that's pretty good. And then with our cube here, if I just sort of drag that out a little bit, it's probably a little bit too much. Something like that. There you go. That is pretty good, actually. Or is it? Maybe it is not. Maybe we should stretch it out further. See, now this is... See what I mean? It's just annoying, you know? Because, yeah... Alright, that works. What I've done here in the space of about 3 minutes, I swear it took me like 3 hours in the initial stage. So don't be surprised if the initial part puts you off the rest of it. This is the hardest part. Once you've got this sort of lined up for whatever scene you're working with, the rest of it is pretty easy. And I have to say that outdoor scenes are far easier than indoor scenes, because indoor scenes, it's a lot easier to see if something's not right, if the floor doesn't match or the walls up there or something like that. Outdoor scenes, there's a lot more leeway because you don't have corners and things like that. So yeah, anyway, okay, so the basics of our scene are pretty good. Just position the camera there. That's pretty good. Okay. Whew, awesome. Hard part is over. So next thing I'm going to do is actually go ahead and delete this front face so that our camera can actually see into the scene. And also, I'm going to delete the ceiling, because the ceiling we're going to add later, and it's going to be like curved cylinder surface there. And now I'm actually going to make all the walls and the floor their own separate object. So I'm in face select mode, hitting P, and then hit selected, P, selected, P, and selected. So that has now made each of these their own separate object. And that's because we're going to be working with textures and fiddling around with each of these as they are their own separate object. Okay, cool. So now that I've done that, I'm just going to select both of these walls here, and I'm going to scale them down so that they are in line with our background, with the walls in our scene, basically. And you can see that the walls aren't perfectly right even. Like, you can see that it's, oh, actually, no, it is, yeah, it's not perfect. Yeah, like, see what I mean? That one's off, you know? See, so, I mean, you can experiment all you want, but at the end of the day, you can still be wrong. I think I happen to know that some of these are supposed to be a certain way. No. I think it's fine. I mean, you know, it's not perfect. It's pretty good, but it's not perfect. But it'll do. I think it will do for our scene. So again, you'd have to spend a little bit longer on this, getting it all lined up perfectly, but that's essentially it. If you want to have a look at my finished scene, and you know, if you wanted to copy the exact rotation and location and all of that of my camera, you're welcome to do so. But we're going to carry on with the tutorial. Okay, so now that we've got these essentially 4 elements, left wall, right wall, back wall, and floor, we can get into Photoshop, which is where we're going to be doing a lot of the magic of this tutorial. We're going to add in the other 2 elements, the ceiling and this front wall here later on as well. But yeah. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on this floor. Now, the way that the camera mapping will work is that we want to make it so that when our camera moves to the right, like that, that even though there's a column in the way, when we move to the right, we can actually see dirt and what would normally be in the warehouse right behind this column here. So you rotate right and you can see dirt behind that. So the only way to do that would be actually to take this original image into Photoshop and then use a clone brush and other tools like that to actually sketch away at that column to basically fake it, to predict or imagine what would be behind whatever object is blocking it. So that is essentially what we're going to do. So let's open up a new, that's what my finished one here looks like. I've just been fiddling around with it. So this is what we're going to do. So we're going to open up our original image using Photoshop. I use Photoshop because I like it. You're welcome to use GIMP. Most of the tools I'm going to be using here are available in GIMP, so it doesn't really matter all that much. I won't get into my rant on GIMP, not in this tutorial. Okay, so essentially I just want to isolate the floor. So I'm just using what is called the polygonal lasso tool. So I'm just going to select the floor like this. Now you'll notice that actually this floor, like the floor that goes to about there, I don't know how to describe it, but basically this wall on the left side of our warehouse is actually further in than this wall that's over here. And you'll see that when you click here and pull out, like it's all in line, and then you pull out to here and you'll notice that there is a gap between this wall and this wall. So basically I'm just going to select like that, just to select as maximum amount of the floor as I can. It doesn't matter if you get a little bit of the wall as well. All we really are focusing on is the floor. If you get some other parts of it in there as well, it's not a big deal. At least in instances like the floor. When you do stuff like the brick wall that's facing the camera, yeah, I'm sort of getting ahead of myself, but that will be a problem if you do this. Anyway, I don't mean to confuse you, but sometimes I do. Okay, so I'm just creating a very basic outline like that, and then we'll click. Okay, cool. So now that I've got that, I'm going to hit Control C and then Control V. And so what that has done is it has created a separate layer like this, and it's created it in exactly the same position as it was before. Now that is very important if you're using GIMP or another piece of software and you move it to a separate layer or something like that, and it moves it to like the center. I hate it when programs do that, but if it moves it, then that's a problem. You need to make sure that it is perfectly in the exact same space as it was before. Otherwise, it will not work with your camera mapping. So just make sure of that. Okay, so now that I've isolated it, I've just noticed also I've got this timeline thing down here, which is kind of annoying. I'll turn that off. Timeline. There we go. Okay. Now I've got the full window. Okay. So as I said before, we need to basically use the clone brush tool to paint or predict or imagine what would be behind this concrete column here. Now, it is actually pretty easy to do so in this image because it's just plain dirt. And the way that the dirt is, it looks pretty good. Like, it all sort of looks jumbled up regardless, like dirt. So you can just take a portion of it and it doesn't look like it's cloned very well, very much. Like some things like if you've got a street scene or if you've got people or things like that, it'll get really difficult. But in this instance, it's actually very, very easy, as you can see right now. Like it's pretty hard to tell that it has been cloned. So it's essentially just taking little parts like this, really easily. And I'm using, by the way, a brush with a 90% hardness. If you go too soft, like if you set the this hardness all the way down to 0, then it'll blend in a lot easier with the dirt texture. But then what you'll have is what looks like by the end of it, like a murky, like a blurry looking result, because you've got a brush which is so soft that it's kind of blended in all of the detail that was there previously. So yeah, so that can be a problem. So I generally use something around about a 90% hardness. If you use 0%, sorry, not 90%, what is it? Yeah, 90%. If you use 100% hardness, if you go completely hard, then what happens is that it's too obvious that you've used a clone brush. Like you can actually physically see where it has been used because it doesn't blend in with everything else properly. Anyway, just sort of giving you a few little tips here. So this part down here doesn't matter all that much because there's actually going to be the wall, like where all this little rocks and all this other jumbled up stuff is. So it doesn't really matter about much of this really. Excuse me, I've got a bit of a cold. Really bad day to be doing a tutorial. I went to the dentist this morning and on the day that I woke up with a terrible cold. So I came in today to do the tutorial and my face was numb because they injected me with, you know, the stuff that makes your face just feel like jelly. And so I was like talking like, and decided I'd wait until the drug wears off before I do the tutorial. But my throat is still sore. Anyway, okay, so now that we've got this, we've eliminated that column. So what we can do is go ahead and save it as a PNG. And it's very important that you save it as a PNG, not as a JPEG or anything like that, because we actually want to keep that transparent background, which is something I didn't say was important, but it's important. Make sure it's a transparent background, not black or white or anything else that you've conjured up. I've got all these folders, chopped 3. You can see I've tried this tutorial a few times, sort of practice. I always try to act out the tutorial at least 2 times before actually recording it. Some days I'm lazy, like today. Or, no, well, I did it twice today, but sometimes I do it like 6 times to practice. But today I was like, yeah, 2 is enough. So, anyway, okay. So, looking back at our Blender scene right now, I'm going to select this floor right now. And the first thing you need to do is to actually UV unwrap it. Now, this is the part which was a problem for people in the last tutorial because previously there was a sticky texture coordinate function. And what that did was essentially it took the coordinates that were shot from the camera and then used that to use it, to map. So how do we do that in Blender 2.6? Because there is no sticky function. Well, my theory as to why they eliminated the sticky function is because it actually does the exact same thing as project from view. So with our plane here selected, if we go U, this is, by the way, looking via the camera, U, project from view, and that will do exactly what the sticky function used to do. So that's why they've made that decision. That's my guess anyway. Okay, so we've gone project from view. Now, if we go, let's just go to the, all right, node editor. And also I'll split this and I'll make this a UV image editor just so you can see what's happened. So you can see that's where the plane is sitting in our camera view, and that's how it's UV unwrapped. So project from view does exactly as the box describes, like that. Okay, so for the material, all we're going to do is use a emitter shader, emission shader, like this. Ooh, what was that? Hey, Subserve Scattering, huh? How about that? That's the first time I've seen that. That's pretty cool. That is, that's because I'm using a, it's a build of Blender, one of the later builds. So that's something that Brett Van Lommel has been working on. The Subserve Scattering for, you know, creating faces and stuff like that, so that light passes through objects. It's a feature that people have been waiting for a very long time, and it's in the latest version of Blender. So anyway, just got a bit excited there because I saw that for the first time. Okay, so we're adding in an emitter shader, emission shader, like this. And then once you've done that, go texture, and then select image texture. By the way, these options here, these are in a shuffled order. It's like somebody opened it in iTunes, hit shuffle. They're all just jumbled up. That's because, again, this is a later version of Blender, and they're doing a bit of work with the Python nodes, and so as a result of that, these all got shuffled, every single one of them. So don't be surprised if yours doesn't match the order that's on here. Okay, I'm connecting that to the color of the emission shader. Now for our image texture here, I'm going to hit open, and we're just going to select the image that I just saved earlier, the floor.png. I'm going to hit open, and now if we look at it with our rendered viewport shader, you can see some of the image texture has shown through, but it's all weird. I mean, look at it. That's just weird. Okay, so why has that happened? The reason that has happened is because there is not enough geometry. For some strange reason, I'm not entirely sure why, but Blender needs more geometry than the current 4 vertices that we've got on our plane here. So you need to subdivide it a few times. Actually, you know what? Because this is a rectangular rectangular shape. It's a rectangular shape. I'm going to use the loop cut tool to make a square face like that. And then I'm going to go subserve. And it's just a good idea to always make sure that you have square faces as best as possible. Rectangular ones can cause problems later on. Anyway, doing a bit of subdividing like this. I'm not using like an exact amount, just enough, you know, something like that should be fine. And once you've done that, go back to your UV image editor and then hit U and then select project from view. Now there is a problem. You'll see another problem. There's always another problem. We've hit UV, what was it? Project from view, but it now actually doesn't match the floor that we had before. And the reason for that is because we've got an image loaded into the UV image editor, which has changed the way that this will paste it across, because it's used to seeing a 1:1 image ratio. So because this isn't that, it's now put it at disproportions. So if I delete that, then hit U, project from view, you can see how that changed. Now if we load in that image, boom, now it actually lines up better. Well, it's sort of outside of it because the original image was sort of wrong anyway. But anyway, it is better. So it's a big annoyance of mine. I'm not entirely sure why they're keeping that, like having it so that it uses the image dimensions of the UV image editor. I've tried to report it as a bug or, you know, alert it to the developers, but they're not sort of taking my word for it. So we're keeping it for some reason. Anyway, I'm not here to complain. Let's take a look at it rendered, and there we go. Boom, awesome, it's worked. And you can see it looks cool, the column's gone, but it looks like the warehouse floor is now completely open to the camera. So that's going to be cool when we add in that wall, and then the camera can move around it, and you'll be able to see that dirt behind it. So if I just select the camera, you can actually see what happens. Just moving around, and you can see how it's all working. So that's cool. Awesome. All right. Well, the next thing we're going to do is do the wall, the left-hand wall, or the left wall. So we're going to jump back into Photoshop, and just using the same Photoshop file, doesn't matter. I'm just going to hide the floor layer, just focusing on the background. I'm going to use the exact same tool that I used before, the polygonal lasso tool. And I'm going to select, just like this left wall. Some people say you should never use the lasso tool. Lasso tool is for unprofessional fools, or so I've heard. I guess because it's not very accurate, and it can create like anti-aliasing issues. And if you were to like try to use the lasso tool for like hair and things like that, then yeah, it's not very professional. But for something like this, I mean, come on. So everyone always says you're supposed to use the pen tool, which I don't really agree with. So yeah, anyway. Okay, so I've just selected this wall here, and I've missed some for some silly reason. I don't know how I did that. So I'm just going to hit Shift just to add to the selection. Oh boy, this is slow. Okay, just like that. Boom. Awesome. Okay, so just select that, and I'm going to hit Control-C and then Control-V. So, again, making sure that it hasn't moved. It's in the exact same position as it was. Yeah, just like that. Okay, so in this instance, because we've got this front wall that is this whole sort of, what would you call that? An arch, an archway, doorway, whatever, sort of like blocking the camera view. Because we want the camera to be sort of moving through the scene, you would be able to see this wall stuck to that wall if we don't paint over it. So essentially, I need to make this part, like as in, oh, I'm going to switch my tool to the lasso tool. I need to make essentially this part here, I need to make that part disappear. So one of the easiest ways I found, and this will pretty much only work for this scene or a similar scene like it, but I can actually take just this part of the window, this window frame like that, select that, move that over there, drag that up, and I'm just going to select this portion like that. And again, I've sort of missed a point. Let me just hit Shift again, just to make sure I get all of that wall there. Yeah. Did I miss it again? How did that happen? Oh, no, that's all right. Oh, I think it's because you can see there's a little bulge that I've missed there. Yeah, that's one thing I haven't really addressed yet, but you will have to note that there is barrel distortion in most photographs, meaning that these walls here are actually slightly curved. So anyway, we don't really need to focus on that. So I'm going to select this portion here. I'm going to hit Control-C and Control-V. And you can see it's moved. I don't know why it moved it, but I hate it when it does that. Anyway, now that I've got that, I'm going to move it to the left. And then I'm going to hit... Actually, you know what? First of all, I'm going to turn down the opacity of it, because this is going to help us for this next step. I'm going to hit Control-T, which is going to allow me to change the proportions of that part of the image. Excuse me. And I'm just positioning it over where this window is going, right here. And you can see already the effect that it's having. It's instead of doing the clone tool, because the clone tool in this instance, I think, wouldn't really be that useful, because it's generally used for, you know, like what we did before, for dirt and things like that. Actually, I just saw on the news website, North Korea was actually found to have photoshopped one of their latest photographs that they put out. They were photographing, or, you know, sort of showing off to the world their hovercraft. So they had like a photo of their armies sort of disembarking from hovercrafts onto land. And they had like 6 hovercrafts in this image. And like 4 of them were found, or 3 or 4 of them were found to be photoshopped. Like they'd used the clone brush tool or something to, you know, to fake it, sort of make it look like they have more hovercrafts than they do. Anyway, I'm not here to laugh at them, but you know, you can get caught out if you're not good with the clone brush tool. Word to the wise. Anyway, so this essentially now what I'm doing is I'm just taking this eraser tool with a soft edge, and I'm just erasing part of this layer because it's a separate layer over the top of the other one, just to sort of blend in that window edge with the other one. And now if you zoom out, you can't even see the difference. You can see a slight difference like here at the top where the pipes don't really align. And if you wanted to, you could fix that up, but it's not that noticeable. So we're going to leave it. That's fine. Okay, cool. Awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure we turn this opacity up to 100%. I forgot to do that. Looks even better now. There you go. Cool. I'm going to hit save as and go PNG and save it in the same place I saved my other one. And I'm going to call this one left wall. Okay. Whew, go back to Blender, and we're just going to do the exact same thing that we did before. So actually, I'm going to use the same material. I'm going to, what's this one called? I haven't given it a name. Let's call it floor. I'm going to make it a separate one, and let's call this left wall. And now we'll give it our own image texture, which is left wall. And again, subdivide, subdivide, subdivide. Delete that image because we don't want there to be that problem that we had before. Go project from view, then add back in the image so that it actually aligns. And then now we go rendered, and boom, it is fixed. There's a big gap there for some strange reason. If I have a look, oh dear. Yeah, you can see that our floor doesn't actually fit. Doesn't actually fit the scene as well as it should. See, now that is the reason why this sort of thing is frustrating. Because it should fit, but it doesn't. Which is very annoying. So, you know what? I think I might actually be able to save this. And I don't mean Control S. I just sort of... Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. It's a little bit better. Yeah. Just gonna move those walls out a little bit. Yeah. I think I'm saving it. I'm gonna do it right now. Yeah. Okay. Let's, I have to, because I've now moved everything, project from view again. Let's go floor, left wall, delete, project from view. If this works, I will be amazed, because I wasn't really looking forward to having to redo this tutorial. So let's hope this works. Yeah, it's pretty good. In fact, look, it's perfect. Nobody will know the difference. Yeah, that's actually what I did in the final one as well. I actually just, there was like a gap in the floor and the wall, so I just grabbed the floor and just moved it up slightly, and you can't tell. So there you go. I mean, it's not as professional as it should be, but it works. Oh, by the way, some people might be asking, oh, Andrew, why don't you use the light path node? Light path. And then connect the is camera ray to the strength. And then what that will do will mean that it appears as its original image to the camera without casting light on anything else. And that is true that it does do that, but I actually want it to cast light on everything else because I'm actually going to be adding other elements to the scene, like beams and stuff like that. So having, you can see that the lighting has turned off, like it's no longer casting lighting on any of these other objects here. So I'm actually going to leave the strength as 1, and leaving it as 1 will actually also give it the original image strength. Like it's not overblown, like if you set that to 2. Why is Blender stalling? Yeah, you can see, yeah. Anyway, set it to 1 and it's fine. Okay, now you could go into Photoshop and do the exact same thing for the wall on the right-hand side, but I'm not going to do that because that's a waste of time, because you guys can do that by yourselves. Yeah, yes you can, because it's essentially doing the exact same thing that we just did. So I'm going to save time by not doing it in the tutorial. Alright, so I've just got this right wall here. I'm going to subdivide it, and I've given it its own separate material. And because I've done this multiple times before, I've actually already got my right wall, which is this guy right here. I've loaded that in. It looks like that. Did I not hit project from view? I didn't. Okay. Delete. Try that again. And now right wall. Now. Ta-da! Awesome. Okay, cool. Now the only thing that's left is the back wall and this front wall right here. So I think we should sort of hurry along because I'm getting bored. I don't know about you guys, but I don't know. Maybe it's just because I've done this so many times. I'm just sort of like, the back wall again. How many times do I need to do it? Anyway, you can see what I'm doing now. I'm just using that same tool, polygonal lasso tool, selecting the basic shape like that. Hit Control C, Control V. Make sure that it hasn't moved in any way. And in this instance, it's kind of annoying because you've got a large portion of the image which is blocked by this column here. So you could use the clone brush tool, but that's a lot to clone. So I'm going to do pretty much something similar to what I did before. Is because you can imagine that the building is symmetrical, or is it called asymmetrical or symmetrical? I can always get the confused. Basically, it's a mirror. So you can imagine the left side looks the same as the right side. So I'm going to take that to my advantage. I'm going to copy that, move that to the right, hit Control T, right click, flip horizontal, and look at us go. Aren't we a bunch of cheaters? Yeah, that's pretty good. I mean, really, all you need to have is like just this line here, this beam, this pipe. As long as you can sort of see that it would connect in the middle there, and that is pretty much all you need to make sure that it's going to work. Like the perspectives and whatever. But that's pretty good. Okay, so you've still got... I'm going to merge these two now, by the way. Merge. Also merge these, the left-hand wall as well. We never did that, did we? Merge. Okay. Alright, so we've still got this big column in the way, but there's less of it to actually to fix up. So that's essentially all we wanted to do. We just wanted to save on any sort of pain that would otherwise be inflicted on us if we were to not have that. And so this is going to be pretty boring if I'm just doing this. So you know what? I'm going to use this platform right now to share with you. Voice my opinion. I don't know how many of the Blender listeners out there have traveled the world much, and maybe gone to a country where you don't speak the language. I'm in Korea right now, and as I said, just went to the dentist. It's the first time I've ever done dental work outside of my own country, which is Australia. And let me tell you, it's a completely different experience, because when you speak the language, you can ask the doctor, the dentist, you can ask whoever, whenever you're receiving medical treatment, what's going on? And they will tell you what they're about to do. Oh, we're going to do a filling. This is going to hurt. And you don't realize it, but that really takes the edge off you. Like, you're sitting in a chair, you're completely vulnerable. You've got people standing around you with sharp knives and sharp tools, and it's a very stressful situation. And if they don't speak your language, you don't speak theirs. Basically, they just have to soldier on through it, and you just have to bear the brunt. And it is terrifying. Let me tell you, I've got friends in Korea, also English speakers, that have had the same experience. They've gone to the dentist or doctor or something like that, and they've actually just ended up in tears because it is such a stressful experience to not be able to ask what is going on, what are you about to do, how long is this going to take, is this going to hurt? I mean, it's essentially, maybe I'm exaggerating. It feels like a torture session. And it also doesn't help. The way they do it in Korea is very, very similar to... did you watch that movie? What's it called? Zero Dark 30? When they drag the guy into the interrogation room and they put a bag over his head so he can't see anything to like disorientate him. It's what they do in Korea. When you go to the dentist. Not even joking. It's not a bag, but they throw a sheet over your head so you can't actually see anything either, which is more terrifying. Because at least, if you can use your eyes, you can see whatever knife they're picking up and go, oh yeah, this is going to hurt in a second. if you're just standing in a dark room and people are randomly punching you at different intervals, it is frightening and you're just flinching preemptively. So that's all I was doing. Eventually at one point I was like, do we have to use the blanket? Because I'd like to see. And they're like, oh, no, we don't have to use it. I was like, oh, if I'd known I could have just said that, it would have saved me so much pain. Anyway, I'm sort of rambling here. Hope you don't mind me just sort of filling the time. We've almost made that column vanish. I actually wasn't going to put this part in the tutorial because I figured it would be too boring. But I wanted to get that off my chest, that little story. So that was that's a perfect platform for me to share that. Cool! Yay! Actually, one thing I might do, I'm going to just grab that part just so that it is asymmetrical or symmetrical or whatever you want to call it. I'm also going to make these little grids there just to make it look more professional. Cool. And if you wanted to straighten up like that row that we've got there and sort of like make it so that it's in line, you could do that as well. But anyway, it doesn't really matter all that much. I also, in my final one, I actually added in some graffiti on the back wall. I'm not sure if any of you spotted it, but if you did, well picked. All right. I mean, not well picked, well spotted anyway. Okay. So I'm just going to save this just like I did for the others. Going to call it back wall. Cool. All right. And now for this one, let me just reuse the same material that I did before. Let's go right wall, and I'm going to call this back wall. And we'll just add, oh, actually no, first of all, before we do that, subdivide it several times. Go like this, delete that image, project from view. There's a lot, this is quite repetitive, this tutorial, I must say. There's a lot of the same old stuff. We're going to do something a little bit different here because you'll see when it renders like this, that we've got this whole like black portion up here. So I'll just show you how you can fix that. Because we used a transparent image, we can make use of that very easily by using a mix shader like this. Drop that in there, and then if we use a transparent shader, drag that in there, and then take the alpha output and put that into the factor input, and then flip these two around. Boom! There you go. Now it's actually using the transparency that we saved in our original image. So this little setup will do that. So essentially, we're combining the emission with the transparent and using the actual alpha values of our original image to define which part is emission, which part is transparent. So that's the little setup that we've got there for that. Okay, and you got a little gap there between the wall, which you could fix by, I don't know, moving in that wall or yada yada. You get the point. I'm not really going to show that. That's fine. Okay, all right. Final thing we're going to do. How long is this tutorial? Woo, getting on like 40 minutes. Okay, let's see if we can hurry this up a bit. We've got to do this front wall here, which is pretty easy. Just going to add in a plane. And let's just position this like that on the origin point. So I've just moved it so the origin point is still on the ground. Now if I move this forward to be about there, I'm going to scale that plane up. Just like that. Good. Alright, so now I just need to map out the basic shape of this wall here. And we're going to be doing a little bit of extruding to sort of give it more detail, like these little steps on the walls there. So just as we're doing the basic shape, only focus on what, like the bricks that are on the first or like the top layer, if that makes sense. So I'm just going to extrude that up along the z-axis, extrude this out to, let's say, there, extrude that out to there, extrude this down on the z-axis like that. Oh, a little bit further so it touches the ground. And then we'll do the same for this side here as well. This is pretty easy stuff. Just like that. Don't be put off if I'm doing it too quickly, and like if you're working on your own scene and it's taking a lot longer. As I said, I've rehearsed this tutorial. Yeah, so I already know what's going on. Okay, cool. So I'm just going to do some loop cuts here. So let's just do a loop cut. Yeah, the loop cut is we're going to be doing a loop cut on every place where there is a little step. So looking at our image, you can see there's a... Oh, I should move this so that it's actually the full size image. So I'm making a little step there. Is that even a step? I can't even see. All right, yeah, that'll do. Okay, all right. So every time I create a little step, I'm just going to extrude inwards. So actually, let's bring this back. Move that down, drag that down, split it, and then camera view. All right, extrude that there. Okay, so this is just creating a little step like that. So that's what it looks like there. And then every time I do that, by the way, I got to delete this face that appears when that happens. Okay. Oh, this might be a little bit disorientating, this part, but I got to do it quickly because I don't want to bore people. Okay, so that one there, face select, and then extrude, delete that face. All right, and then one final one over here as well. And then face select, extrude it, whoops, extrude it back, delete that face, and there we go. Okay, so I'll just do the exact same thing on its other side. Ooh, so yeah, I don't even know if you can see a little step there. That's all right. Some people might be wondering why we're not using the mirror function, the mirror modifier or something. For this instance, that would be inappropriate, not because it's a curse language. That's a lame joke. But because we're using camera mapping and stuff like that, you've got all different elements and different angles and camera and stuff like that. So this wouldn't really work that well. You've really got to fake it just to make it work in your scene. So there's a lot of like bending of vertices and non-flat walls and all that extra stuff. So if you're using a mirror modifier as well, that's really going to throw everything out of whack. So that's why I'm doing this piece by piece. And that's really all there is to it. Yeah, I mean, camera mapping is pretty easy, I must say. Really, it's just one of those things which just takes time. You just have to be patient. So put on some music, or I don't know, whatever you do. Listen to a podcast if you want to, and just work at it. It's I actually like this kind of stuff, like the monotonous, boring stuff. It's the stuff where you have to think, which always trips me up, where I'm just like, ugh. And I have to stop my music and actually think how I'm going to fix a certain problem. That's the stuff I don't really like. But anyway, okay, so I've got that, and now I'm just going to do the same thing for the left and right hand wall. But you know what? This is getting boring, so I'm going to pause the tutorial and just show you how it looks when I finish this whole facade here. Hey, there we go. You can see it's all finished. Yay! And you can also see it's a bit of cheatery going on. These walls aren't aligned, they're not flat. It's all right. It's going to work. Don't freak out. It's going to be fine. Okay. So now that I've done that, close the window. Let's reopen it again immediately. I'm going to UV unwrap it, but actually we actually need there to be more vertices even in this scene. Even though I've done all this extra geometry, I'm going to create some extra loop cuts just so that Blender doesn't freak out with the lack of geometry and do things weirdly. So something like that. I'm going to hit project from view, and then yeah, you know, I think you can figure out how to crop out this portion of the mesh. You just use this polygonal lasso tool, and you just go back and forth like that. And you select it like one by one, and you go bing, and there it is. And then you Control C, Control V, and then you save it, and then you end up with this. Essentially, when you put in more effort. Anyway, and then you go back into Blender, just like we did before, and oh no, all right, move that across, grab this up, go node editor, and let's go materials, and I'm gonna select the back wall, gonna use this, and then let's call this one front wall, and I just realized I haven't moved the camera around to show you how it looks when you like add in all the stuff. That's the coolest part. Alright, so I'll show you that. Okay. Front wall. Okay, and then let's go into rendered viewport mode. And there we have it. Okay, cool. So now I can show you. You move the camera. Look at that. How cool is that? You can move the camera wherever you want. And it just works. How sweet is that? So one of the downfalls of camera mapping is that it's most fake whenever the camera... it looks the most fake on the ground. So you can see here, if I go into... let's go this view mode. You can see that the scene looks pretty good, like all the walls, all the front faces, all that stuff there. But the floor, especially when you move the camera up, you can see it looks all stretched and blurred out and everything. So that is one of the downfalls of camera mapping. So you have to work around that. So in my final animation, I sort of kept the camera above the ground, like not focused on the ground, sort of like pointing upwards. So that's a way that you can get around that. But yeah, that's basically it. So, yeah, you can see, I mean, we're pretty much coming to the end of the tutorial, thankfully, because I'm pretty sure you guys are sick of hearing my voice now. I'll show you how to quickly create the roof. Yeah, the roof. Add a cylinder, and let's give it more vertices to play with. Let's go 64 vertices, and I'm just going to scale this up, rotate it by 90 degrees. And what I want to do is, looking at our image here, oh yeah, I shouldn't have selected faces. Let's delete the front and back faces like that. Okay. All right, and I'll just go up. All right, let's have a look. Okay. So I'm looking at the background image. I should go full view. There we go. And I'm looking at the way that the roof is shaped like that. I just want to position it to be pretty much that. That's pretty good there. Okay, cool. So now if I select, delete that face there, and then that face there, then I can select all of that, and then delete all of it. Cool, so now I've just got that portion of the mesh. So now I can move that down. I should have done that when I had the full thing. Now it's all wrong. Yeah, that's pretty wrong now. Oh well. Yeah, why is that? Yeah, that's pretty weird, isn't it? Pretty weird. Alright, let's drag that over. Oh, it might actually be because I was looking the wireframe mode, perhaps? Yeah, it's not so bad from the non-wireframe. So now I'm just sort of faking it a little bit by pushing and prodding it, hoping that it will fit the ceiling, where the ceiling is supposed to be. So I'm scaling along these Z axes, sort of making it more of an arched ceiling. Like so. Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah, it's not bad. I mean, again, all this stuff just, it's the amount of effort that you put into it is what you're going to get out of it. Essentially. I hate it when people say that, but it's true. You really have to just spend extra time on this to make it work. So I'm going to add a few loop cuts in here. Let's go project from view, and I'm going to use a pre-made image because I don't think you guys need to know all that Photoshop stuff. I'm sure that is something that you guys can sort out. Let's go. Oh, you know what? I'm sort of losing it now. I could just copy one of these ones, couldn't I? Let's go front wall. Let's call this ceiling. Delete this. And we're going to use the ceiling image. So now we should have, ta-da! The ceiling is in place. So if you want to know how that was done, it was actually the hardest part of this whole process to create this ceiling here. Because if you have a look at the original image, there's not actually much ceiling to go off. So essentially there was a lot of the clone brush tool, but it was like stupid slow clone brush tool. Like having to select like one little portion like this and select like that, like one by one. And then like maybe once you've got one clean square, like duplicating that square and sort of moving it around. And then once you've got a bunch of squares, you can duplicate that to create rows. And that's essentially how I got that ceiling there. And then in my final one, I added in a bunch of beams and bars and stuff, which I can show you here, which is just this, which is incredibly easy to make. It's just cubes, which have just been rotated and moved around and stuff to create what you can see there. And then I've created a few chords and stuff. And again, this is just playing with the scene. And this step is really what's gonna like sort of push the scene out to be a little bit more realistic, like look more like a video. Because if you've only got geometry there, it can sort of look fake to the viewer. But if you've got in some physical objects like beams, like a lot of all this extra geometry here, then it'll work really well. And this geometry isn't camera mapped, by the way. It's just like a blank black material. But because it blends in pretty well with the rest of the scene, there's not a problem with it. I also added in some particles. These guys right here, like some slowly floating around particles, just to make it look like a dusty kind of warehouse type image. But anyway, I'll show you one other thing as well. And that's just for things like, if you have a look at the scene, you've got, oh, I should have just left it what it was before. You've got bricks and stuff coming out of the ground. And if you move the camera around, like if I select the camera, as you move over the mesh, you'll notice that stuff like, especially this brick right here, you can see that the brick is being stretched. And that is a problem, because when the camera moves through it, if you've got stuff like that stretching, like stuff that really should be raised up out of the ground, it's going to look very fake. So that's something I'll show you right now, how to fix. And it's really easy. All you need to do is doing pretty much what we did just before, using this tool here. I'm just going to select this brick right here. I'm just going to focus on this guy. Just very crudely selecting it like that. Hit Control C, Control V, and then you've just got that guy right there. I'm going to hit Save As, Save PNG, and let's go save it where I saved all the other ones. Let's call it Rocks. And then you go back into Blender, the one we're actually working on, not the finished one, this guy. Okay, go to solid view mode, and then just from the view of the camera where you had it, where you've been doing everything before, make sure you don't move the camera yet. Oh, hang on, what are you looking at there? Oh, good grief. Oh yeah, the cube was way out of way. Okay, so it's got to be sitting on that plane. Okay, let's move that up. Okay, position it just over the brick, like that. We'll scale that up. Drag this across, and then I'm going to rotate it as well. Just so that, because obviously the brick there is rotated. So a little bit like that. And something like that. And this is where having that transparent image, the background in the original thing is going to come into play. Because what I'm going to do is, let's just change this to UV Image Editor. Let's go U, project from view, and then I'll give it the material of the back wall, and I will create a separate material, call it Rocks. Man, I'm just listing off instructions right now. Basically, I've come to the end of the tutorial, but I know there's some people that want me to explain pretty much everything, so I'm basically just explaining it for people who care. Everybody's already left the room. There's just a few stragglers left on. So if you're still listening, hey. And that's it. There we go. We've got that rock now in our image. So if we move that rock around, you can see it is an actual physical object. So when the camera moves over it, like, whoa, hang on. What am I selecting here? Camera. There we go. So as the camera moves now, and especially if the camera comes down low to the ground, that object will now be sticking up out of the ground. So it actually looks a lot better, basically. And because you've got like a duplicate brick now, like if the camera is above it, you can see there is 2 bricks. So the way around that would be just to what we did before, just with the ground here, you'd just take the clone brush and you would just, oh, get out of it. Man alive. And just trying to do this quickly. And just clone out that brick exactly like I just did then, and save it over the top of the floor that we just did before. And that would be that. So yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. So what you would do then is for the fun part, the actual camera movement, we would change the resolution to be 1080p. Make sure you only change that resolution once you've come to the end of your process and you want to start moving the camera around. So then if I just set this where this camera is sitting right now, go location, rotation, let's move that out of the way, and then let's go to frame 250. Let's move that over, And let's position that there, and then let's go eye, location, rotation. So now if we just, this is how I make it so Blender doesn't render the entire screen. Almost the whole camera, but not quite. Now if we play through that animation, it's a little bit fuzzy, but you get the picture. It's working fine. And that is how you do it, guys. That is camera mapping in a nutshell. So there is some awesome camera mapping examples out there. The best one is one that I'll place directly below this video. If you're watching it on Blender Guru, make sure you watch that video. It's mind-blowing. It was by a user who did it using Cinema 4D. Doesn't really matter. You can do the same thing in Blender. It's incredible. Make sure you watch that video because that'll really get your inspiration juices firing. But yeah, that's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Hope you make some cool stuff. If you do make some cool stuff, upload it on YouTube and post a link beneath this video. I like seeing what you guys create. And that is all from me. I will see you next time. Bye.